I don't know if Nate posted the meeting.
Thanks, John, I appreciate that.
Another comfy chair. My bottom does not fit on this seat.
Their meeting, but I had to post because there was possibility.
No, I'm eating. How can you miss me?
What?
The 12th town misses. I'm not Dalton's.
Not here.
Yes, don't
Here.
bother with Todd's.
You guys can sit wherever you want. I'm not the party planner. I just put plates up. I just and that was it.
It's good to see that the superintendent and I dressed up for
Need to
this.
budget it.
Yeah.
We're gonna eat.
There we go.
Well, it was closed all day. Were you guys here? No, you were
Well,
there.
there's no school today. I was here about, I came in about noon.
It's not. I bet you don't want it. I just don't want it like that.
So are we not going over the Article 16 now? Town.
Article 16 on the
We
town.
originally had Article 16 on the town side.
What was it?
The other cable fund.
The other cable fund.
We did that, didn't we?
No, we
did the citizens petition one. That was already voted upon.
I know,
have.
he had wanted to talk about it.
Oh, but we had agreed on it, and then the council, they were going to change it to be above the other article. So that you could read that first. At least that's what I think it was, although, you know, about midnight on a Saturday morning,
As we-
had done it.
there were,
We
you
voted
know,
against it, actually.
rainbow ponies dancing through my head.
This one was... Yeah, sure.
You're not scooching. Okay.
There's no one else coming, huh?
Nate's ready. Sit right. You sit over there. The nice chairs.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can we go sit in here?
Yeah, you just said that if you want.
The fat man says yay.
We're not mean like that.
Good point.
I know why.
You want a gavel? Here, we got it, we got it. We got it.
No, I meant we're not mean, we won't let you sit in the comfy chairs.
You want a gavel?
Yes, please.
There's your gavel. Go right ahead.
I'll sit in the most. I had the worst back the next day after. I feel it.
This is good. My bum fits on this one.
You get a little back support.
Right here. Did you say cuticles? Cuticles.
Jesus.
Necessary.
Never did that job again.
I call to order this budget committee with the school district this evening. If, Lisa, you'd be kind enough to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So on this evening's agenda, we'll give some opportunity for public comment. And let me just go over generally the purpose of this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is so that the Budget Committee can consider to rescind its previous vote for the purpose of reconsideration. By reconsideration, and again, this is on the collective bargaining agreement, Article number 3. And by reconsideration, what is meant is simply to have the Budget Committee listen to any additional information from the school district regarding the collective bargaining agreement of Article 3, and to answer any additional questions the Budget Committee may have with regard to this particular collective bargaining agreement. And then with the purpose of the rescinding of the vote for reconsideration, what that means is we take back our previous vote, if we so choose to vote to do that, for the purpose, as I just mentioned, and then subsequent to gathering additional information and answering any additional questions we may have, we would subsequently take another vote on Article 3 for this collective bargaining agreement. Another purpose of this meeting is to gather some information and answer any questions with regard to Article 5, which is another collective bargaining agreement. And subsequent to listening to any information and answer any questions with regard to Article 5, we would then subsequently take a vote for Article 5. Another item that we may be up for reconsideration is Article 8, if there's a consensus to do so. I'd also entertain a motion at that point, when we get to that point, and I can go over what Article 8 is and all that once we get to that point in the meeting. So to get things started, what I thought we should do is, if the Budget Committee so chooses, to go ahead and take a motion to rescind our vote on Article 3 for the purpose of gathering the information, reconsidering what our positions may be, and then taking a secondary vote subsequent to this evening's information that we may get from the members of the school board and the superintendent, Nate Greenberg, with any details surrounding that collective bargaining agreement. So with that, do I have a motion to rescind our vote?
I so move.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor to reconsider vote?
Can we have discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we can.
I think it sends a bad precedent to move to vote on reconsideration now. I think that perhaps we should have a dialogue, take public comment, and then decide if we individually and as a group feel that reconsideration is necessary. I think reconsidering something without some kind of predicate sets a bad precedent. So I would prefer to hear if there are additional things that we were not aware of. If that's the case, then perhaps that may influence my vote. If it's merely asking me to reconsider a decision because it's unpopular, I can tell you what the vote will be.
That's fair enough. The purpose, and again, by reconsideration, it's simply that. It is to reconsider where our position is based on input we may have. It may not change. It may not change at all, but I wanted to open up the meeting. We can do it a number of ways. We can wait and hear all the information and just have a discussion about the collective bargaining agreement. And after hearing additional information, we could then, later in the meeting, discuss and take a motion to rescind our vote for the purpose of taking a second vote. Or at that point in time, if there is no motion or the motion does not pass, it's done. Everybody's vote remains as it was before. That's what we could do. If the consensus of the committee is to take that route, I'm fine with taking that route as well. So let me throw that out there. Is that what the consensus is? We'd like to hear the discussion beforehand? Yeah. And then take a...
Yeah, I concur with John.
Okay. Do you guys also have that idea? Then do I have, can we...
Can withdraw the motion?
Withdraw the motion?
Just so you're withdrawing the motion.
Mm-hmm.
So just so I understand it, we had discussion on this matter, and then you would take a motion to rescind, and if you have a majority that votes not to rescind it, then that's it.
That's it. Mm-hmm. That's it.
So we're not going to take the motion, then do it, and then decide whether we want to rescind it or not.
That's right. That's right. So in essence, if a motion is put on the table and seconded, we take a vote, and the vote is, 5-2 or 2-5 against rescinding, then it's done. We keep our original vote. Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, I would just point out that the motion for reconsideration is really a courtesy that other committee members, whether you agree with changing your vote or not, we would extend that courtesy whether it's to a majority or a minority, I'm assuming, of the committee. So I would encourage my fellow committee members to allow reconsideration so that everyone can have a chance to vote for the second time following the presentation. If we're in here and we're so rigid in our views that no new information is going to change our minds, then I think we're wasting a lot of time this evening. I'm really coming in here tonight and hoping to talk through some issues here and to think through some issues. And I would hope that the committee would allow a full vote of the committee on this article so that that's on the record for the voters. If we do not do that, then the former vote would stand.
I think in essence, excuse me, if I may just respond to that comment, I think the purpose is we're procedurally trying to figure out how to listen to additional information and have the ability to gain more information. And I'm just trying to figure out what the proper way would be to make sure that, in fact, we're doing this the right way. We're giving due process a chance in all objective fairness to say, all right, let's listen to any additional information, and we have a choice. We can do that and force ourselves to have to take another vote later, after we hear all the information, or we can keep the existing vote we currently have now and still listen to a lot of information, answer any questions we may have. So it's innate. Maybe if you'd be so kind, procedurally, I'm just trying to do the right thing here and make sure that we're procedurally taking the right steps to give you the opportunity to provide us any additional information on this. Is it the right way to go in terms of proper procedure to rescind the vote and then listen to everything, deliberate, and then, or are we going against any rules by listening to additional information on the collective bargaining we already agreed, we already voted on?
You can do it either way.
Okay.
You can open it up for discussion, and then based on the discussion, you can then go ahead and make a motion to reconsider the vote. And since everybody voted 0-7 on the Roberts rules, you have to be one of the dissenting, so you're covered. Anybody can make that motion. You get somebody make a motion, somebody seconds, and then the committee would vote as to whether or not they would listen to reconsideration. Then that's the first step. Then once reconsideration is done, you can then bring it up again. Then you bring up the original article, the original vote, for a vote. Okay? You can do that at the beginning. You can do it after you hear. It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Is it of the, thank you, Nate. Is it of the consensus of the committee that we've withdrawn the motion to rescind the vote for the purpose of reconsideration? Do we want to just go ahead and listen and then take it from there? And then after we listen, take public comment, discuss it, make sure that we give every opportunity to the school district as well to answer any questions, provide additional information. After all that, then we'll take the vote to rescind and reconsider. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move that way then. All right, thank you. So with that, we are going to discuss the collective bargaining agreement for Article 3, which was voted previously, as you guys have already been aware, and the purpose of this meeting is to gather more information. Do we have any questions specific for the school district that you'd like answered? John, please.
Nate, on the other side of the aisle with the town council, 3 of the CBAs that we were looking at, there were major liability issues. One was the 125 rule with retirement, and first question is, does that apply here, and if so, to what degree? Because that was, at least in my mind, a driving force. The question I put to Dave Karen was, they're giving up this 120 concession, not the whole thing, but the concessions on the 125 rule, and they're giving up things on health insurance. And does the COLA that we're giving them 2 and 3rd year into the contract, are we net to the benefit of the taxpayer or net to the benefit of the union? Okay. And he was emphatic about the fact that we're going to have a financial benefit, and that's what weighed in. We talk a lot, and I'm not anti-teacher, but and we're not asking cuts. We're looking at maintaining or something close to maintaining until we get out of this financial mess. So, are there any concessions that we haven't already talked about that we should know about?
Let's on the 125. Question about 125. We put that in the contract, last contract, that spiking was not allowed, and that we would not be in that situation, and we would divide it up. We saw that coming down the pike in the last contract, the 2010-2012 contract, and that was taken off the table.
Okay.
And that is, it's in the contract there. I believe we have it in all of our contracts.
Yes.
And all our contracts, or even with the administrator. So spiking on the school side, as we realized the effects of that, we took care of that.
So it's a non-issue in this?
Non-issue on
Okay.
the school side.
Well, what was the concession on the 2010, 2012 to get that provision? Or was there a concession?
I think, no, I think what it is you can't say, on the school side, you can't say, you give me this, I'll give you that. It's here's all the issues, and as you get the end of the day, you put it together, and that's one of the packages. That was a big issue for us that we would not have left the table without wording in there because of the liability. And that's, you know, we have some of those issues that we come out and say, listen, guys, this isn't right that the taxpayer is going to pick up this new cost that the state has put on you if you overload your benefits. So, and again, on the school side, it's not that much as on the other side of the fence, on the town side, because you know you don't have, for the most part, you don't have the vacation time and some of the overtime benefits and all those items. So it's a much lesser effect. It does affect, and you can get into it on the school side, but it's not that, what was it, Deerfield, where the police chief retired, and it almost doubled, and that brought it up the issue. So no, we got that as part of the contract that we put together. It was in the last contract. The other question you had about is health insurance.
Health insurance.
One of the things that I think you need to look at is when we put our health insurance together, we've been at 80-20 forever. I mean, we negotiated that eons ago. So, and we've got everybody on the same basis on the health insurance. It's not a case that we have to go down from 97 down there. There's nothing to give up. 80-20, and I think that puts us, when I look at it, I think Derry is the only district that has the same amounts, and everybody else is higher than us on the district's co-payments. The other thing that we have when we look at the health insurance is that if you opt out, we have 93 people that get $500 to opt out, as opposed to a larger amount in some other places.
Upwards to $2,500.
I mean, so we negotiated that eons ago. We have been negotiating, I think, reasonable contracts on benefits side over the years. We moved the teachers from Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem to school care, and that was significant amounts of years ago that we did that. That was a major savings for the taxpayers. I mean, we still see that in the benefit charts that we see. So those are some of the things. It's not, what have you done here is, we try to look, not this contract, but how am I setting myself up for the next contract and the next contract after that? How do I make those changes in the systematic way? I may take a benefit here that has zero value to you, but in the future it will. Let me give you an example of what we did in the support staff contract. We negotiated health insurance. They used to get health insurance after working 4 hours a day, or I'm sorry, 5 hours a day. They used to get benefits for health insurance. What we ended up doing, negotiating in a contract, is that all future employees would have to work 1,300 hours in order to qualify, i.e. 7 hours a day. So I'm looking at Susie to make sure I'm not lying. Keep me straight. So that's what, So we looked at that. Right now, there's virtually no one except the secretaries that have health insurance. But that was put in, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. We're seeing the benefits of that today. So, I mean, we sit down, and I know myself and the other board members, we strategize not so much this contract. We've got stuff in the queue for the next contract already and the contract after that, where we want to go with different things.
Rich.
Ron, you you brought up a valid point here about, setting yourself up for the next contract. I think that the main driver here, or one of the main drivers here, is the percentage of increase that I think made everybody's eyes go wide. Over 2%, people find it like unacceptable. The prior contract, what were the percentages on the prior contract? Is this a makeup?
No, it's not a makeup contract.
Okay.
The contract steps, and let me go back here. It has been at least 3 contracts, and maybe even more, that the teachers have had a step raise and a cost of living raise. And what I'm meaning by that is a cost of living raise is that I take the whole scale and multiply it by a percentage, and then they take their step. Okay? We don't have that in Londonderry. This contract does not have it, the last contract did not have it, and the contract before that did not have it. And it goes beyond that point. So what that means is, like anyone on the steps, just get the steps. There's no cost of living. I mean, I think there are towns that you see that they say they get a 1.5% cost of living increase. They're getting a 1.5% cost of living increase and their step. So we have tried to do that. People that are off scale that no longer get the steps are getting a cost of living increase. So anyone that's beyond the scale gets a cost of living increase. They don't get a step. There's no one on this contract that gets both a step and a cost of living increase. It's either or. Chris?
So what percentage did the steps go up in this contract?
This one here, what the steps are, there are 2 steps in this contract. Bachelor 0 and Bachelor 15 is normally a 4.2% step. Okay? And Masters is a 4.6% step. Okay? What we had done on this contract is taken that step on the first step and split it in half. So they get 2.1 and 2.3 the first year of the contract, and then they get the second step in the second year of the contract, and the third one is the full step. There is no other adjustments other than that. So they're taking a half a step each in the first 2 years.
Right. In essence.
Or if I put it in other terms, and we didn't negotiate it this way, it was a 0, step, and step. So it was all the way that we negotiated, and that was part of the give and take on how we negotiated that portion of it. Nate?
Yeah, just to pick up on what Ron said, our steps remain the same. Other school districts, what you'll say, to go to Ron's point, let's say they said a 1% increase, and the difference between their steps is 3.5%. So in their proposed contract, really what they're getting is a 4.5% increase. All right? In ours, there's no double increase. We kept all the steps the same. So step 2 is going to be the same in year 1, year 2, year 3. It doesn't change at all. The only thing that would change would be people's movement to the step. And in this contract, it's a half, and a whole. So in other districts, the way it works, this is the educational world, let's say somebody will say it's a 2% salary increase. If it's a 2% salary increase, generally it's 2% plus the steps. So if the difference between your steps is 3.5%, the 2% is applied to increasing. It's 2% an increase in each step. So if you go from step 2 to step 3, using my example, that's a 5.5% increase. All right. Whereas ours is an actual 2.1 or 2.3 if it's on the Masters, 2.1 the second year, or 2.3, and then it's either 4.2 or 4.6 if it's on the Master's scale. No double increases. That's it. So what we did basically is slice the steps in half for the first 2 years of the contract, and then give people another step. But the value of the steps did not change. What you'll see in other contracts is the values of the steps change, and people move up a step. So there, in essence, is a double bump that's built into it. What we also did, just to give you just some comparison data, let me pass this out to you. I don't know if I have enough of the ordinance, but I can make,
Hey, in regards to that, the two separate bumps,
Right.
the step and then the actual increase off the article, the initial step is covered under the general operating budget, correct?
No. And we're not giving,
There's not two steps there.
there's no two steps for us.
I understand
Right.
that, but in
No.
other towns,
Yes.
No,
No.
not anymore.
What you're thinking of, up until last year, in the last legislative session, you had the evergreen clause.
correct.
Which the steps were automatically part of the budget. With the new legislature, they took out where they appealed the evergreen clause if it was not written into the contract. We do not have one written into the contract. So all monies that are new monies this year for the teachers and allied health need to be in the warrant article. There is zero increase in the regular budget.
So it's just flat line.
It's just flatlined. That is correct.
There are some school districts that have in their contract an evergreen clause, which is allowed by the law. We have no evergreen clause.
I realize that.
Right? So the sheet I gave you, I gave you the districts that we usually compare ourselves with is Bedford, Concord, Derry, Keene, Manchester, Merrimack, Salem, and Wyndham. All right? And what I did was I took Step 1, Step 5, and Step 10, use a comparison because the others will be very similar. Bedford, out of the 19 categories I listed, Bedford is higher than us in 18 out of the 19. Concord is higher than us in all the areas. Concord doesn't have the in-between steps there. Salary schedule is a little bizarre. Derry is higher than us in 12 out of the 19 categories. We're higher than Keene in all the categories, but Keene's up and away. Manchester is higher than us in 10 out of the 19. We're higher, Merrimack is higher than us in 3 out of the 19, so 16 out of 19 we're higher than them. Salem is higher than us in 15 out of the 19. And Wyndham is higher than us in 19 out of the 19. All right? And the data I think that we provided you at the last time indicates we're just about in the middle of the state. We're a little bit higher. We're at 54,762 is our average salary, and the state average is 53,746. So let me give you an example. Let me take Derry just as an example. On their proposed contract, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, so I mean, I hope Derry gets what they want, and please don't look at it that way. Their present master's step 1 is $40,139. Ours is $37,965. And keep in mind, Derry doesn't have a high school. Their contract only goes K-8 because their high school teachers are in Pinkerton, all right? Under their proposed contract, at the end of their proposed contract, their master's step 1 would be $41,971. All right? Ours stays the same. So in essence, they would be $4,000 higher than our teacher on Master's Step 1. If I go to Master's Step 5, their present salary is $47,673 compared to our $43,277. All right? At the end of their proposed contract, their Master's Step 5 would be $49,849, and ours would be exactly the same as it is now, which means there would be a difference of $6,572 at that particular step. All right, so if you're comparing steps along the way, because our steps for the life of the contract stay exactly the same. So there's no inflation of the steps or increase in the steps. And in essence, our teachers would only move 2 steps in 3 years.
And there's no COLA in the steps.
And there's no COLA.
So just to follow up on it, because I'm a little confused, because Ryan, you said there's been no increase in the steps in 9 years or so.
That is correct.
So somebody coming in today is making the same thing they were making 9 years ago. As a 22-year-old bachelor's degree never worked.
We have not changed the steps there have been a couple of times when we've eliminated a bottom step and moved it that way because to stay competitive on that lower scale. But once you're on the scale has not changed for anyone that has come on the scale for the last 9 years.
Nate,
Yes.
last time we met, you started to speak a bit about the concerns you had a number of years out in terms of retirement and backfilling and things of that nature, and it sounded like perhaps if we're not careful, we could be setting ourselves up to be in a little bit of trouble filling positions. Could you elaborate a bit?
Yeah, well, most of the school districts in our area have pretty much the same demographics. That is, we have a large percentage of staff members that have 20-plus years in the district. And I think I went through it last time, and just a quick review. Almost 34% of our staff have 20-plus years in. 23% roughly have 11 to 20 years in. Then we have a group of 38%, 4 to 10 years. And then we have a group of 5.5%, 0 to 3 years. So the people in the 20-plus year group, within 3, 4, 5 years, depending on their birth year, are going to be moving out. So the pattern, our demographic is probably pretty similar to Derry's, Manchester, Merrimack, Bedford, the whole 9 yards. So the concern down the road is going to be, as all these people move out, even with declining enrollment, there's going to be a need to attract and maintain new people coming into the system and offer competitive salaries. And also, you want to be relatively close, because what we don't want to do is be in a position of hiring people, having them here 3, 4 years, investing in training, and then saying, geez, I think I'll go to Derry for another $6,000 a year. So what you want to do is limit the turnover you have and also be able to stay competitive. So if you're within, a couple $1,000s, and the fact that you get to work in Londonderry and it's nice, tends to be an attraction to keep people here. However, you start to get too discrepant, knowing that kids are coming out, particularly with huge loans. Okay, I can speak from personal experience. Coming out with loans, and so $6,000 more a year at a master's, okay, than in working in District A versus District B is going to be more attractive. And particularly if you've been in it for 4 or 5 years, all right, which means while they are here, we would have spent a significant amount of time with training and staff development and in the whole 9 yards. So now we've spent all this time training these people, and then they move out, and now we're back in the same boat. So what you want to do is stay competitive. So as Ron had said, when we look at the contracts, what we're trying to do is not only look at the length of the current contract, but try to put us in a position that 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road, 5 years down the road, knowing what the demographics are, that we're at least in a competitive position. We're not looking to be at the top, because we certainly aren't, but to be competitive so that we can attract and keep people in the district. And the other thing that's important too is, as you look at the demographics too, you want to have as much stability as possible, because now, please don't take, this is not meant to be sexist in any way whatsoever, but we have more and more people who are of childbearing age. So if you're constantly hiring young people who are then leaving to go someplace else, and at the same time you have a large segment of your population, and we tend to have more females than males, that are also leaving for 6 months or a year for maternity leave, then you create a disruption in the continuity of your program. So what you want to do is look for as many ways as possible to maintain continuity in your program without having a major in and out, in and out. It's just the nature of the situation. So what we try to do, as Ron said, is to look ahead, try and address specific issues, but also at the same time, try and look at what's happening, what we think is going to happen 3 or 6 years down the road. And all the things that Ron had mentioned earlier, too. Switching of the insurance carriers, and the whole bit. The other thing that we also did in the last contract, okay, which applies here, is it used to be that every teacher received 15 sick days a year. What we did in the last contract was anyone who's been with us 6 years or more only gets credit for 10 sick days as opposed to 15. So we cut back on the number of sick days teachers were allocated. Now they can accumulate, but they wouldn't accumulate as fast. In fact, we reduced the amount that you can accumulate each year by a third once they hit 6 years. So that was another thing that we did.
Is there anything in the contract, this agreement, that if the district were to invest in helping to train or educate a teacher to achieve a master's, is there any period of time of service expectation that's part of the contract? I know in some places they have that kind of a link.
Legally, you can't do that.
You can't?
You can't. Legally, you can't do that. I think the term is involuntary servitude or whatever. you can't do that. But what we did on a policy basis was set it up so that if somebody wanted to leave during the course of the year for whatever reason, there are only certain reasons that we can release them, and we don't release them until we have a replacement.
So there's no understanding that if there's tuition assistance, that the understanding is we'll help fund it as long as you agree, the operative word being agreed, so it's not what you were saying before.
No, you
There's
can't.
nothing like that?
You can't. Legally, you can't do that.
But do we require them to have a master's?
What we're doing, here's the other thing, too. What we've done, and this was Ron's thinking a long time ago when we moved it, is we've capped how high you can go at a bachelor's 15, and a bachelor's 30. All right? So you can't, if you come and you teach here and you decide that you're not going to go, and we don't have many people at the bachelor's level, you hit a certain level, that's as high as you go. Bachelor's 15, that's as high as you go. So what we did was to entice people, as a motivating factor, we said if you go for your master's degree, you're going to be able to make more money as the longer that you're here in the school district. So we've capped how high you can go if you only have a bachelor's or bachelor's 15, and in this contract, we capped for all new employees, we capped bachelor's 30. So if you're on the bachelor's 30 scale and you're hired, you can't get cost of living increases once you hit the top step. Whereas people who are on the master's scale and wind up being off, for instance, the 2% that we had talked about, would be eligible for it. If you're on the bachelor's 30 and you're a new hire, okay? You cannot get that cost of living increase. So whatever that dollar figure is, that's what it is, and you don't get an increase that next year. So by adjusting the schedule, we've provided a motivating factor for people to go back and get degrees. The other thing that we did, which was along the same lines, is 5 years ago, the Riviere program?
Yeah, 2005.
2005, wow, time flies. We set up our own in-house master's program in conjunction with Riviere College. So, and what we do is the courses are kind of designed to meet what our needs are here. And we pay 2/3 of the tuition rate. So, teacher can take a course and it only costs 2/3 of what would be the normal tuition rate. So that's another way that we, A, entice people to further their education, and B, is cost effective for the school district. Because if you take a graduate course now, you know it's a couple of $1,000 for a graduate course. So what that has also done is it's enabled us to on the course reimbursement account to keep that lower than it would be under ordinary circumstances. And we've had 62, 63 of our own staff members get their master's degree through that program since we started it. So by adjusting the salary schedule and also by developing our own in-house master's program, it's A, been cost-effective, we think, and B, it's also encouraged people to further their education. The one other thing, too, as far as requiring people to come back, every once in a while, we have people that go on sabbatical, all right, and they can get half pay. When they come back, they owe us a year. They can't go on sabbatical and then say, have a nice life. If they do that, then they have to reimburse us, all right? So they're required to come back for at least a year to do it. So, and we've had, I don't know, a couple, 3 people since I've been here.
To your point about, I think you use the word indenturement or keeping people here. I think, like, if you look at even in the private sector, you know, if we have a good path, career path for people, and, you know, we have incentive programs like Nate had mentioned about getting your degree, and we have things that don't stagnate you, so you get to the top of an area and you have a career path, but you can't go any further if you don't apply yourself. I think those things are motivating teachers to stay within the community.
Oh, absolutely.
You're always going to have your attrition through, hey, I can get it someplace else, the grass is always greener. But I think we've developed an environment where, you know, teachers look at this and say, hey, this is a life, you know, life commitment that I could actually make, and there's a career path, and these guys think about me. And I think that's, you know, some of the attraction to what the school district, you know, supplies, and that's why we don't have the attrition that you might see elsewhere. You know, if we, you know, you get educated and go elsewhere if we don't pay right.
Oh, I would agree that the Londonderry School District is a fantastic environment for a teacher to work within. So I see your point, absolutely. Mr. Kiro.
One of the things I'd like to also talk about is also when you talk about the age group that Nate spoke about, we have a senior group of teachers. If you start losing that group in the middle, that's 7 to 11 years, okay, and those other teachers retire, we're forced just to make the quality of education stand up, hire people with senior experience to fill those gaps. The way we are now, in most cases, except for math and science, because they're very difficult to get, we hire first and second year teachers in here. So we bring them in at the lower part of the scale because we've got the experience and the rest of the staffing in order to train them and bring them along as part of a team. Once you start losing that 4 to 7 years and your senior people start retiring, now you're going to be forced to hire senior people. So that's one of the reasons why you want to stay competitive. You don't want them to leave. I know Nate's talked about the training, but I mean, us in business, you know, we hire our staff. We make sure we have a nice curve there so you have the demographics that are equal so you can bring in the young kid out of college because you have the senior people to help them along. And that's what we've done in the school district also, so we're able to bring in the younger people.
Chris.
Two-part members question. How many people are covered under this contract?
I'll tell you exactly.
You got that number?
198.
It's 387 is FTEs.
How many of them are on top of?
That was the vote, right.
Well, off scale, 142.
140.
So roughly
That's a bigger
1/3.
number than I expected.
Yep.
That answer your question, Chris? Tom?
I just have one question about the program with Riviera. Somebody signs up for a course, town pays 2/3 of the cost, is that what?
Yes.
What happens if they don't pass?
They have to pay us back.
Just curious.
And
My other question, that was just
In fact,
question I had.
they have to get at least a B.
Here's the question I really have. This is the part, I think, that the impact to me, I just don't know where it comes from. The first year was going to be $600,000. How does it get to be the total of the first 2 years in the third year?
Because that's the first year, half that, the second year.
Half,
It's the half and a whole.
That's kind of the wrong years.
So that, I mean, that impact there, when I look at this, and I look at the other articles that we're looking at, I'm looking at a budget of 66 million for a round number. By the time we get to the 2015 budget season, we're going to be talking a default budget of $70 million, all that.
I think a couple of things that you need to look at also is when we figure that out, we also figure with the people that are on staff today. And when you look at that is, we do get the retirement of the senior people as you go along here, and that kind of takes off, and we're seeing, generally, I'm going to pick out the year, I think it's about $500,000-600,000 worth of retirements in a delta in a year of salaries between the person we hire and the person that leaves. When you start to, last year was a little tougher because of the economy, but once the economy picks up, you start to get the retirements, and we see that delta. We put in the what's on staff today. Do I expect to see those people here and that salary number go up that way? No. Can I tell you exactly what it is? Absolutely not. But there is a change in the personnel that we have on staff that reduces that number, and you'll see it in there, and Nate spoke about it in his underfunding the substitute account because of the people that retire to balance that out. He spoke about that in the budget time, and we've done that every year. There's $200,000 or $300,000 that kind of goes away in those numbers every year, so that teacher salary number goes down.
But here's what I'm looking at. Do you think that the revenue in the town is going to go up, stay the same, or go down?
Oh, the revenue in the town, where we're going is, I believe it's going up. I mean, the revenue in the town.
Will it go up if the taxes go up?
No, I'm talking about the tax base. This year we had an increase in the tax base. We've had significant increases in the tax base over the years. So I think the tax base goes up. That
we
means
have a shortfall of estimated revenues of $750,000.
When, the answer is, you asked about the tax base.
I asked about
Tax revenues take in other accounts. You're talking about the tax base. What we look at for the tax base, okay, is there. If estimates on the registration on cars, registration on homes and all that comes down, that's something else, or how they estimate it. The tax base last year went up. Peter, do you know how much?
I thought it was 30 million.
Okay.
It went up a significant number.
So what I'm saying is the tax base has gone up. We have gone up there, and what's the town valued at right now?
It's 3.1.
How much of that 30 million can we spend?
It's a percentage. It goes into the tax. It's revenue neutral. That money is revenue neutral.
Maybe I'm not directing this question properly. Do you think we're going to take in more money as a town this year than we did last year? Do you think the state is going to give us more money than they did last year?
No.
Do you think the net, when we get done with everything, is that we're going to have more spendable dollars this coming year than we did last year?
It's not more spendable dollars. As you go into there is the tax rate. You have X amounts of money that you need to raise by taxes divided by the property.
We can raise the taxes to $5.
No, but
and we'll have more money to spend.
No, it's not a case. I understand what you're saying, but if this is the money and the property tax goes up, if the property value goes up, the tax rate goes down. So that's how it works. It's revenue neutral with the tax base.
I understand. If we need more money, we raise the tax rate.
You're missing. You're missing. I guess I'm not explaining it well.
No, it's the point is, everyone said they need to go and revalue everyone's houses, and if they actually do that, and everybody's house value goes down, everybody's taxes are going up.
The rate goes up.
Is what you're saying.
In order to...
No, it's not.
No, it's... I apologize, I'm not doing a good job here. If the value of the town goes up, okay, and that's that we've built some other properties at the airport or whatever, okay, and you have your tax rate, or the amounts of taxes you need to raise, the rate goes down,
If the base goes up, the rate goes down. It's simple math.
Companies are paying more than...
It's not companies, you got more paying, okay?
That's because you have a broader base on which is applied, the tax rate is applied to. So if you have a $3.1 billion base that all the properties are valued at, that's your base, right? And if you apply, whatever revenues are that you need, it's a simple matter of if the town needs to raise and appropriate $64 million or whatever the number ends up.
Tom's question simpler.
Excuse me. I was in the middle of talking here. When you have that expenditures that you need to raise and appropriate a certain number of funds, you do that by calculating what your rate needs to be based upon that base. That's kind of the message you're trying to say, is if the value of that base goes up, all things remaining equal, your rate would go down. So if your expenditure portion of that goes down, or is equal, but your base goes up, your rate goes down, right? If those expenditures go up commensurate with the base, relatively speaking, then it remains relatively neutral. If, in fact, expenditures go beyond what your base can currently support, that's where you have a tax rate increase. And I think all Tom's point is simply this, is the question is simply, do we feel that we will have to increase how much people will have to pay a property owner in town in order to support this? And I think the answer is that it's already been adjusted. We already know the answer to that based on the impact that we have. And to put a finer point on it, it's to the tune of 19 cents per thousand in FY13, 18 cents per thousand in FY14, and 31 cents per thousand in FY15. In absolute dollars, that means that over that 3-year period for a $300,000 home, your taxes would increase $204. On a $350,000 home, your taxes would increase to you'd have to pay another $238. And if you had a $400,000 home, your taxes would increase to about $272 more that you'd have to pay out. Is that answering your question, Tom? Is that what the point you were trying to make, or?
No, the point is I'm trying to find out a consensus of whether or not we're going to have more spendable dollars based not on raising a tax rate or anything else. When I look at this, if the taxpayers out there, and we get a town side and we get a school side, and we end up with a number that conceivably could be in the $700-800 range increase the way we're going, if all of these warrant articles on both sides pass.
Everything.
Yeah.
All things
You got
considered.
a lot of money.
Sure.
You got a lot of money.
Sure.
And then down the road, where does this leave us? Your example of looking forward and being able to compete in the marketplace is well taken. I totally understand it. What we've got here, at what point, to John's point, one-year contracts were good. But that impact, if we just take those numbers and just look at your default budget today, I know you came in 308,000, whatever the number was, under default. But we're going to be looking at something close to $17 million as a default budget, if, in fact, it's just a 2.5% increase and then contractual obligations each year. And that 2015 budget year, when you catch that $1 million hit. Where are we going with this type of number to be, I'm talking in total, looking forward, where are we going with this kind of numbers, these kind of numbers in 3 short years? That's kind of a question I've got. How then do we attack the cuts? How then do we have, because contracts will be due again. And where is that going to lead us to? I don't have any problem with paying somebody to do a job. I don't have any problem with being competitive. Is this the right way to continue going on? On the other side of the coin over there, we got a mess with overtime. Everybody kind of agrees it, but it's a necessary use. Well, you can't use the same thinking that got you into the mess to get you out of the mess. So is there another way to go about it? All I'm asking is if we don't think we're going to we got a lot of issues with the state that haven't been resolved. part of them retirement contributions. We got a 3-year, I guess, because it's a 2-year budget that the state has, so this year's going to be pretty much stable. What's coming after that? What about unfunded liabilities? What do we have? The bond numbers are good in relation to what you can have. They're very, very strong. The whole structure of the town is extremely strong. That's probably the best time to ever look at maybe a different approach and a different way you might do business. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying it's a lot better doing it that way than it is looking at it if you have a problem. This town has been managed well, the school department's been managed well all the way through it, and on both sides. At some point, we're starting to reach things that can take us in the wrong direction. All I'm saying is, with different scenarios coming up with the state in the next budget, do we anticipate more or less money? Where is that money coming from? We got the $1 million swap there last time that kind of helped us out. Who knows? Nobody knows those things. So do you want to really commit to something that puts you in this position as what we call contractual obligations that are there and we have to take care of them? Well, maybe, back off of them. I'm just looking at these total numbers, and that 31-cent impact, I think, was the biggest single item that we had in anything that we looked at. I may be wrong, but I can't remember one that was that large.
As you look at it, though, as you look at it, you've got to look at the total number of employees that we have as teachers. And I mean, if we had half the teachers, that would be 15 cents, and would that be okay? I mean, the answer is, we're looking at the rates, and you look at it as a 3-year contract over that way, where you've reduced the first couple of years, the times are bad, and you're looking at that. I mean, at least when you were on the school board, to get half steps is almost unheard of type of deal. And I believe that it is. I think the school district looks at that long-range plan, and we've done it. We've adjusted to the times, and we've adjusted to our structure. With the administrators, I'll use the elementary school. The administration, we've eliminated an administrator at each of the elementary schools and things like that. We've combined services and items like that. Would I love to have zeros all across the board? Of course I would. I'm a taxpayer too. Is it fair and equitable?
One other point, and this is kind of what starts to scare me going forward. At the present time, if you take salaries, benefits, and debt service, what percent of the total budget is that now coming to, and extrapolate that out with these 3-year contracts? The number is getting extremely high, in the 85% range maybe, somewhere in that ballpark, maybe higher.
Right, but
where does that leave you to do and work on other things? And I'm not talking cut, I'm talking maintain. When people use the term, you want to cut the teacher's pay, that's not the case, okay? What I'm saying is, to me, that maybe this is a little on the high side going forward for what the total package could be. I realize you guys put a lot of effort into getting this and done in the vein of many things besides just a pay package, okay? Again, competitiveness, looking forward, and on and on. I think the numbers, when we read them, I think they're high. And I just had a real problem with the future of it and where that's going to take you. That's the issue I have.
Rich, why don't you go ahead? You had a question.
Very good points, Tom. I'm just going to switch gears for a second in regards to how the article's written. I hate to take you out of the subject which we're talking about. In the article, it says 2012, fiscal year 2012, 2013. We're working on 2013 fiscal year budget. There's no retro here, right? I just want to confirm.
Absolutely not. No. It's the way the article.
Yeah, well, if it's 2013 fiscal year, why is it marked as 2012-13?
Yeah, it's 2012-13 is FY13 fiscal year.
It's the last year, it's July, it's June of what year is what's considered the FY year?
Technically, it should probably say for the FY 2013 fiscal year, which means
People are going to look at
the
that.
school year of 2012 into 2013.
It's school year 12-13.
Right.
Right?
So-
The second number is always your fiscal year number. And so this is the way the warrant article has to be written for legal purposes. So that's why you have 13-14 and then 14-15.
Let me ask a
For
question.
school year, not fiscal year.
Peter, the real question is, on the last 2 years, you have FY in front of the number, and you have 2 years there. Should the FY be there, is, I think, the question that's being asked. Should it be?
It's a technicality, but it's one of those things.
The first number doesn't need to be there. It's
If they said FY
13,
214.
14, 15.
Or say 2013, 2014, that's, I think, the question.
But I think, this is just me now, it's less confusing for the general population if you say 12-13, they know school year is 12-13. Then they know the next school year is 13-14, and the next school year is 14-15. You start putting fiscal years in, and it tends to confuse people.
It does. It
I
does.
mean, it does. If I said FY13, somebody might think that that's the school year that starts with 13.
It's a technicality.
I think what you're saying is we're mixing both. If I read the warrant article, FY 13, 14, that's what I'm saying.
For clarity, it may be clearer to say, for school year 2012-13, fiscal year FY13, something to that effect.
What I'm telling you is legally, that's the way it has to be written.
I'm curious, is that different from the town municipalities? Because on the town side, they just put in the articles, the FY year. Lisa?
Yeah, I want to get right down to what I think is at the heart of a lot of the problems that the Budget Committee is having with this, and it's the simple percentage increase. We just got out of a meeting with the town, and we looked at a series of budgets that replicated one after another. And in fiscal year 13, the tax increase from the previous fiscal year was 0. FY14, it's 1%, and FY15, it's 1. And those numbers just are in stark comparison to 2%, 2.2%, 2.5%. So could you just take that on for us and really, with clarity, address the difference in what we're looking at in these budgets?
Okay. All right. Can I just ask a clarifying question? The 1% that you're talking about, is that bargaining agreements?
It's actually, no, it's actually, to correct, it's actually that 1 cent or less tax impact.
Oh, that rather than
2% rate increases.
increase, you're
So
right.
it's 0% rate the first year,
2%,
2, then 2.
2%.
I just want to make sure
If you look
that's
at it,
clarified.
Thank
Our
you.
general fund budget, without the warrant articles, right, it represents a 0.5% increase and 10-cent reduction in the tax rate,
Right.
right? What adds on to that are all the warrant articles. Now, be honest, I haven't paid that much attention to the town side, so I don't know what their budget is plus what their warrant articles are. So when you look at, ours tends to be, here's the general fund budget. Ours is a dime less on the tax rate and represents a 0.5% increase, general fund budget. The additional items, the two contracts, and the maintenance trust, then would obviously, people get to vote differently, get to vote separately on those items. But as far as the general fund budget is concerned, it represents a 0.5% increase
Right.
and a 10-cent reduction in the tax rate.
I think I was addressing more specifically the tax impact of this, the percentage rate increase of this contract in years 1, 2, and 3.
All
So
right,
this
so-
in specific was...
All right, so I guess I'm at a disadvantage, so please, which contract are you talking about on the town side?
We had 3 come in. if I'm in the right order here, it's AFSCME Local 1801 in the town of Londonderry, AFSCME LAEA Public Safety in the town of Londonderry, and I don't know. And AFSCME LAEA Town Administrative Personnel.
Okay, I
So
guess,
those are the three
And-
so I'm just saying,
yeah.
we're looking at these
And-
contracts, and
Right.
whether it's fair or not, we're holding you to that standard. When we objected to their budget, we held them to your standard. We said, listen, you look very bad in comparison to the school district, which has come in with an exemplary budget. They've even cut $50,000 in the past week. So I think this is the kind of thinking that we're having, and I'd just like to take it on directly.
Let's take on the administrative staff. Have you compared the administrative contracts?
I have
I'm
no,
going to ask you, what was the rate of increase at the last, what was the amount of percentage increase in the administrative contract? Because I remember that from last year.
022.
What, administrative last year?
Oh, last year?
At the
We're talking
town
about the
meeting?
ones that we just voted on.
I'm talking about the town administrators last year.
Catching up, right?
Yeah.
What was the percentage?
For some
I
reason,
believe-
17% is in my head.
That's the number that rings in the head.
Ridiculous,
I think it was like
because
a
it was
3-hour
put off
conversation.
every year, and it kept getting denied.
But I'm saying is, there's the 17% over there. You know, you give someone a 17% raise, you kind of can go down a little bit, 0. Second part is, the one, as a taxpayer, that I have trouble with is the comp time for executives to show up at meetings. Okay, our administrators, I'm just using an example, or the teachers that we bring in at the end of the day to present here do not get any extra money when we bring them into the school district meeting or anything like that, or they attend the curriculum committee meetings, the IT meetings, the special ed meetings, the, or the PLC meetings. There's no extra money for all those after activities after school. So, I'm just stating a fact on that.
By the way, they try to negotiate that in, and we flatly denied them on that. So be aware that they were looking for those types of incentives, and we would not accept those.
Let's,
This is a good point, and, excuse me, Todd, just 1 second, but can you add to that? What other things were asked for that was denied, so we get a better feeling of how the collective bargaining agreement actually went?
Again, the teachers did not come in there asking for half a step. Okay? The steps are, if you go into a teacher negotiation, you go anywhere, steps are sacred. It's almost something they have in their back pocket. Okay, I've got that. Now tell me what else I'm going to get for increases. Okay? So that's something that's just part of the deal. So when we get in there and we have a reasonable negotiation, say, that's not going to fly. I mean, the answer is, it's not going to be there. We've got to figure out if the times are difficult. Let's look at that. No, we're not going to give any additional dollars to what you got on the table here. The steps are where we're going. They came in with the Boston Nashua cost of living increase, which is higher than the percentages in here. So those are the type of things they look at. Again, they're looking at a couple of the other things, and I'm just don't know how far I can go with this. Susie,
Right.
That's the part, Susie, if I say something, yell, and I'll shut up real quick. But the other thing is, they look at that, they're not, I'll be honest, they're not happy about the 10 days to the 15 days to 10 days. So that's always something that they want to get back, those 5 extra days. So those are the type of things that we talk about and how we're going to do it. And we kind of, those are some of the big money issues that we try to talk about. You know, we go in there and they know if we're at the table, is 80-20 is the number. So we could talk, that's a deal breaker. We ain't changing that. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's not going to go. So we're not changing benefits in any situation. So those are the type of things that we go. Yes?
The step increase to to a half a step, that was a concession.
On their part, that's correct.
Can you put a dollar figure on it? The question I posed to Dave Karen on every contract across the way was, what is the net financial impact to the taxpayer? Is it we are gaining, losing, or maintaining? To try and sell what is ultimately $2.3 million over 3 years, I need to see some offset financially as to what that step modification.
The half a step would be if what we've got here is basically a half a step. So what you would do is take the 638 and double it. If they had gotten a full step, it would be 638, 352 times 2. So what you're looking at is, if you want to call it a concession, on the step would be to the tune of about $638,000.
Offsetting the 2.3 mil or offsetting 1 year?
No, just the half step.
The half
Maybe another $638,952
So-
in addition to what we see.
We would also do the same thing on
Basically,
year, too.
I think the number is a little closer to about $850,000. If this was a step, this contract would have been somewhere in the area of $1 million, $1 million, and $1 million. So as you save that $400,000 type of deal.
So those numbers are actually already factored in the modification on the step?
They're already netted with the 2.3
Already
million.
netted.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be 3.186.
And following up on some comments
850.
made earlier, I think it is sticker shock. I think the amount is, both as to the overall contract as well as the percentage increase, and it is dictated in large measure by the number of members to that particular group. I mean, it's a less shock when you look at the other contract, 56,000 for the second year. It's difficult from our perspective. Martin Srugas reminded us next door of what our charter is, which is to offer the taxpayer's perspective. And the union's negotiating for their members. They have a job to do. You guys have a job to do to, maintain a vibrant workforce. We have a job to do to push back. And I think that's where our vote is coming from. It's dictated by trying to see if there's something close to parity or there is an overall financial impact. Unfortunately, I don't see my role as getting into what you folks have to deal with day in, day out, which is, keeping employees and whatnot, because it's a tough year. And I think even a 0 increase the first year might have been a little more palatable. And I think that doing a modest increase for 1-year contract in light of the times would be more palatable. But I really think that the number is just so large at a very difficult time. It makes it hard for me to support it because we did the analysis across the way, and I put Dave Karen on the spot, I hope, and said I want to be able to look a taxpayer in the eye and say, I held my nose and agreed to this such and such contract because ultimately that's going to save the taxpayer money in the long run. And that's the kind of information that I'm looking for, frankly. I'm not anti-teacher. I'm not trying to.
This is not anti-teacher. I mean,
and I'm not looking. And I'm not looking for cuts because I haven't heard one taxpayer say make the teachers, take a cut. I think they're saying let's keep something close to parity, and this is a number that just jumps off the page.
So just to be.
John.
And I'm speaking for myself.
Understood. What was the increase last year? What did the teachers get last year? What did we increase them?
I think it was the 4.4. It was the same, about the same. It's about the same. Yeah, it's about the same as the third year of this contract.
So it was 4.2 last year, right? And what does that equate to in dollars, taxpayer dollars, that we had to actually figure into the budget?
It'd be last year. The third year of the contract.
It's about $1 million.
$1 million, which is, so what, 31%, right? 31 cents, right?
30 cents.
30 cents. So we renegotiated, right? So if you look at that, the last year of the contract was 31 cents, right? We renegotiated, and we're now back down to 19. And, I understand the sticker shock because this is an estimated cost. It's something that we have to put on here. And all else equal, right, this is the number. If nothing changes for 3 years, this is the number, right? That's what we have to put out there. Do we expect things to change? And I think we've gone through those types of things. Do we expect the number to actually fall on 31 cents by year 3? Most likely not, but we can't say that, right?
Understood. I understand that.
So we look at that, and did we, as stewards to the taxpayer, did we do our due diligence? And yes, we have to juggle a lot of other balls that are associated with just not a budget, but also running a school district. But I think if you look at this and you understand where the number was last year, and you look at the numbers moving forward, did we do the right thing to ensure that we look out? And again, it's a hard pill to swallow, we understand. But at the same time, look what we paid last year, look what we're asking to have paid this year, and then understand that we don't expect that number to be true come the third year.
And I was sitting here thinking, it's funny, you talk about being a steward. You're almost victims of your own success. Some of the things that you've done in prior contract negotiations have been beyond the vanguard. I mean, you've been kind of cutting edge with getting rid of 125 and evergreen clause, and some of the other things in the contribution toward health insurance. Unfortunately, from a budget committee perspective, I can only look at the current contract. I'd pat you on the back and say hallelujah as a taxpayer, but there are folks I'm sure that'll say, you doing your job.
Judge,
so
can I ask you this question?
Well, let me just finish the thought. Is that we are only looking at one contract, and we're looking at it in isolation and looking at it in a time of economic distress for many, many people who are on fixed incomes, retirees, unemployed. It would be easy for me to vote for this. I mean, I'm tax negative for the school system. I got 3 kids in the school. So, in the grand scheme of my financial picture, not a big deal. But for those folks that I hear from, it is a big deal.
And we understand that. Let me ask you this question. Given the information I just gave you, that last year was 31, and now you look at 19, is that palatable? If I said to you, we just went from 31 to 19.
Well,
is that a palatable number?
On both budgets I've expressed, in this economy, I understand when we have a kind of an economy that's running on all cylinders. I'm not a big fan of 3-year contracts, just as a fundamental principle. I don't know what the economy is going to do in 3 years, and I understand the teachers want some stability, and all the employees want some stability. But I'm rather bearish. I don't think the economy is going to turn around on a micro level the way that everybody's talking. On a macro level, corporate America, sure. But to catch up to the households, I don't think it is. And we may grow the tax base. We may bring in more business. Woodmont may come in, and it may be tax positive. Could be tax negative. That's a whole different animal. But I just don't like automatic pay increases for the next 3 years when I personally don't see household finances getting any better and potentially getting worse. I think at best we're going to maintain. And I think that's what the taxpayers that I'm hearing from are looking for. Something close to parity. Could I live with the 1%? Yeah, I could probably hold my nose. But, 2%, 2%, 2%. If I look at a $55,000 average teacher salary, my math is terrible. I went to law school because I'm not a mathematician, but at 0.021%, that's a $1,155 pay increase for first year. And then if you use that increased figure of $56,155, you add on $12,063 and change for the next year. At the end, you're up close to $59,000. That's a $55,000 salary. I know there are people that are down at 35. I know there are people that are above it. But a $4,000 pay increase over 3 years, and the older folks that I hear from in town say, that's ignoring that it's a pretty good health insurance plan, and it's pretty good benefits, and, with the exception of, some of the downsizing in younger teachers, it's pretty much you're sure you got a job. So that's what I'm hearing from folks, and I put on my hat not as a parent, because it would be easy to vote as a parent, and I'm voting as the taxpayer's representative. And it's the number, it's the duration, it's the automatic pay increase each year. I mean, I think that we were looking on the other side of the aisle. The question I was asking was what concessions were given and what is the dollar value of that concession compared to what we're being asked to swallow and absorb. So unfortunately, it's a finance game. It's not a reflection on the teachers of the school system at all, and I think you guys know that. Maybe the public won't get that message, but that's how I'm looking at it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but...
I did just want to comment that my understanding is before I arrived that the Budget Committee voted unanimously to support those contracts, and while the first year was a 0% increase, the second and third year were 2% increases. So we're now talking about, a 0.2% difference in the second year and a 0.5% difference in the third year. I mean, we are getting down, we are dialing down to pretty fine numbers here, and I just don't know that I can oppose this contract based on a 0.5% in FY 2014 and 2015.
Just to keep the record complete, Lisa, Dave Karen went through the 125 and the monetary value of us taking a hit on that,
yeah,
as well as the change in the health insurance contribution by the employees.
Yeah.
So that was...
And the fact that this has already been done by our school district isn't to our benefit right now in this discussion, yeah.
But as you said, already done.
Yeah.
I applaud what they've done in the past. What I'm looking at is this contract now.
Yeah,
and what is the financial impact now?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Campo?
John, I guess I have to take exception to that logic. I apologize. The answer is, okay, we're being penalized in this contract because we didn't give them the 125 all these years for all these years and take it out of this one-year contract. And I said, you've got to look at a contract or a contract over time. What concessions have they given over the time? You're looking at this, when I've taken away the health insurance, and I still think that we're probably, I don't know what they're at now. What's the new contract bring them?
Well, just to be clear, clarification, you didn't take away health insurance.
No.
You switched health insurance, but get good coverage at a good price.
And at a lower co-payment. So, I mean, if someone's higher than them, they bring it down. The taxpayer's been benefiting for the last 10 years of the lower benefit or the lower rates. So, I look at that and I'm saying is, you got to look in total. Some years, there's not a whole heck of a lot. You say, every year I got to get something and look at this. I think one of the things in this contract that's going to pay a lot is that Bachelor 30, where you take it and you fixed it at the end. I think that's going to have significant numbers because as I look at that, I think there is right now 38 people in that group above that would not be in that period of time. I think that is a major step. Just the fact is that was a major concession to give that up. I think the other item in this contract, which has significant monetary value, is the RIF clause, which you didn't talk about. The change in the way that we reduce staff. That benefits the district. I mean, we are looking to make sure we keep the right people in the right times and not go by a seniority basis. This thing defines it into grade levels, not saying a special ed teacher is a special ed teacher for the whole district. It's over there. Math, science, high school is different from middle school. We've made those distinctions. One of the things that I look at is I look at a contract. Am I providing, people move to Londonderry for the quality of education and for their children. Does this contract maintain that at a reasonable cost? Have I provided the services, the 99.4% graduation rate? Those are the type of things that you have to look into. And those are the type of things the teachers here. Yes, there's a lot of teachers here. We are a service organization. We put a body in front of a classroom, and they teach the classroom. That's the way we deliver the services here. And that's the idea, that's what we're doing here. I took a different approach when I sat on the Budget Committee. Is the contract good for the town? The voters can make up their own mind. Is it reasonable for the town, this type of contract? They can vote with their pocketbooks, and if they voted, I say, yes, sir, I understand your message to me. Is this fair and equitable to the town? Is it fair and equitable to the employees? Will we continue the services that I think the Londonderry residents are expecting from the school district? Those are the type of questions when I was on the budget committee to I look at. Is this reasonable? If this was a 17% increase, I don't think that's reasonable. I would have voted no. I'm not telling you how to vote, but that's when I was on the budget committee. That's how I looked at it. And I had 2 terms on the budget committee. So that's...
Dan.
You know, on both sides of the budget of the town and the school, it's been very difficult to make any decisions on anything. It's very hard just to look at numbers and take the emotion out of whatever that we vote on, and that's kind of what I've had to do. I've been put in a position where I have to make decisions. Both of these budgets combined, should all the warrant articles be passed, at the end of 3 years, be looking at a combined town and school budget of $100 million. And I think that people have asked that we have a little restraint on that. And we have to look at some of these numbers, and that's a big number. And it's not that I don't want to give teachers a raise. I don't want to lose teachers. It's just, it's a big growing number.
Rich.
Hey, in regards to, Ron, you brought up a point. What's the downsizing offset that you see over the next 3 years under this contract?
Well, I would say that we're going to wind up continuing downsizing. Probably for the next round of the budget, there will be a number of positions at the elementary level that will be dropping, as well as additional positions at the middle school. The year after that, there'll be additional elementary positions gone and additional middle school positions gone. Probably the third year really will, third or fourth year out, it will really begin to impact the high school. What we've done over the past is for about every 20 student drop in enrollment, we've dropped a certified position. My guess is that's going to continue for a while. So you're going to get some, this year, the net of the positions we dropped were about $438,000. So if you want to look apples to oranges, the number of positions we dropped was almost the equivalent of what is being requested for in the first year of the teacher's contract. All right? My guess is that number will probably be higher next year as we go forward, and probably higher the year after that. So what you're going to probably see is you're going to see an offset in this cost based on positions dropping. So to that extent, I can't guarantee that it's going to balance out dollar for dollar, but there's going to be an offset.
It's not where we want to go with it either. I don't want to see into the library where you give huge raises and then realize...
No, this has nothing to do with that. Let's go with numbers.
Yeah.
Okay? We just went through reducing the staff at the middle school. Okay?
Yeah.
The high school's base, and I'm going to pick some numbers, somewhere about 420 kids in a class, roughly, give or take, that's 1,600. Middle school is somewhere between 3 and 350. So as that moves up, I don't have to offer the classes. This is not a case that, oh my God, I'm balancing the budget versus this. I don't have the students coming through. We're seeing the elementary schools coming through, and the numbers are down at the 320s. If John's prediction is true, that it's going to be a stagnant economy for 3 years, that'll continue. If we see the economy raise and you get more people moving in, that'll change it. But right now, if you told me to look at it, and I don't have my numbers for my yellow sheet there to tell me, but I know over the next 3 or 4 years, in fact, over the next 7 years, the numbers are going to be going down throughout the school district. So you're seeing the class sizes starting to drop. That's why we can eliminate the elementary classes. And now the high school, probably next year, freshman classes, you're going to see less classes needed. Less classes needed mean less teachers. It's the fact of life.
And you're not locked in under this contract?
No. But that's where the wording in here helps me a lot. The RIF clause, because that was, we negotiated that, it took us 6 months to negotiate that portion of the contract. And the way it's split up there, the 9 to 12, the 6 to 12, so you don't have someone that is very, very good at a middle school teaching at a high school, which is two different types of teaching arrangements. So we have the RIF contract in here, which I think is excellent, and the wording, and if you read the article, if this doesn't pass, that we have to go to a special section, wording is not one of the items to do. We would lose this, and we would lose the bachelor's 30 freeze after the steps.
So what you're saying is if this contract as presented fails, then we're back to zero, and you have to refight that territory all over again.
And I can't do it in a one-year contract here. Say we come to an agreement, because the wording in there, it says it's for monetary items only, I believe is the way the wording says.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I cannot say, okay, we reduce the money, but I still want those articles. I can't do that based on the law. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just wondering, if the town did refuse this contract, what is the process for the negotiation, the time and the money that would be required to go through that process again? How exactly does that happen?
What we would do is open up the contracts again. We would start negotiating. There's a cost associated with that because we have our legal person that comes in to do it. And we would negotiate the contract, bring it to the voters. We'd have the cost of a new vote, because we would be obligated to bring it to the voters and see where we are. I know this sounds insane to you, but as you said that, if we did not reach an agreement and we went to fact-finding, I'm not so sure fact-finder would have as good of a contract as this, based on experience with fact-finders. And you've seen that on several of the other contracts that have come through.
At this point in time, actually, before I go there, Chris, did you have?
Can you give me just a little more basic understanding of the steps? Are they getting an increase in the steps every year, or is it every period of years, or?
A step is every year up until...
You mentioned a 4-point-something%. Is that a year?
That's a 4.7, that's the difference between the steps. It's 4.2% and 4.6%.
Okay, so the people on a steps, and because I'm trying, people are talking about parity between contracts. That's what I'm trying to do, is the parity. So for 3 years, if they're on the step system, they're going to get a 12-point-something% raise.
Right, but this contract here reduces that to...
So 8%.
8%.
On the other side, if they're at the top of the scale, they're going to get roughly 6.75%.
That's correct.
The town contracts that we all voted through tonight are about 6.5% with everything. So there is parity with the percentages. How do you not get that? You get the merit 2.5, then you get 2% for 2 years.
Those were upset by the concessions.
According to what they're saying, yes. But I'm just talking about, I'm talking about being fair. It is the same percentage is all I'm saying. It's a similar contract.
They're not that dissimilar.
That's all I'm saying. And my other issue with and I'm not necessarily still leaning against this, honestly, but if we do not vote for this contract, those people on the steps do not get their raises.
No one gets a
raise. So for
raise.
us voting against the 142 for their 2%, we're also taking away the raises for the other 245.
Yeah,
that's a big issue to me. But
no one gets a raise.
Right.
And again, if you look at it that way, if they're getting rid of if they're taking the benefits that they're getting, you're saying is offsetting, it offsets it the first year. That's a tax benefit. But you've seen the next 2 years, you're seeing the total amount in the contract, because you're going to see the raises that go up those 2 years.
And I think everyone understands exactly what you're saying, but to John's point, the benefit if we don't approve it is there's no tax increase next year. So I understand what you're saying. I know you're saying there's a saying, but...
Just ones like her, if the voters don't approve.
Of course, I'm sorry, yes.
That little detail.
I guess it all depends on the math, and I understand that they offset costs, but the actual cost of the salary that happens in the 4th year is that total amount.
Right.
It starts next year, it's that total amount, the John number. So there's not much difference here. I mean, you say I got an offset here, well, you got the offset last year, or this year here you got the offset of the contract. So in year 4, when you have to negotiate it, it's that 6.4% that's in the budget.
And I'm not trying to penalize you for doing a good job on a prior contract. I just have to deal with the reality on the other side of this building that they do face exposure, and that was a consideration. You don't have the same exposure because you already anticipated and cut that off at the pass. And that's to your disadvantage. I recognize that.
I don't see, to the voters, I don't see that as a disadvantage. It's just because this
No, to your,
I don't think it's a disadvantage because we were aggressive enough to go after these things early. We went after it immediately with the contract on the 125. We had them in the administrative contracts before. They didn't pass the law in there. They were still on the probation state, and we had it in the contract. We had all those items there. So I'm not seeing, because we are proactive and aggressive in our negotiations, I think the taxpayers of Londonderry have benefited in our reduced costs for health insurance, moving people over for years. Now someone that comes to the party late and says, wow, look what you've done now, I don't think we should be penalized because we were looking at that aggressively. I guess that's my problem. I'm looking at, you're penalizing me here because I did a good job the last 6 years. Doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
I apologize.
No, and
John, I'm sorry, did you?
No, and again, we're looking at the current contract. I'm not doubting, and I applaud, the efforts made on prior contracts, but we got to look at this one. You can't rewrite the prior contract, good or bad, for either side. There's always buyer's remorse when you negotiate a contract from one side or the other, or hopefully from both. When both sides think they got a bad deal, that's usually the sign of a good negotiation. I got to look at the balance sheet though here. That's really where I'm coming from.
I'm telling you the balance sheet, in year 4, when they negotiate their contract, they're up the same percentage we are. They're up to 6-point-something%.
But it's high, and I recognize I'm asking you a difficult thing to put a dollar value on half steps versus full steps and RAF and all that. I mean, that's a little more illusory than, we got somebody who's going to leave on the town side and the liability is $450,000 to them. It's a little easier to quantify. And I think where you and I disagree is I think it's reasonable with the caveat in this economy. You and I may agree on a reasonable contract in, the standard economy. This is, as I said at the last meeting, there's been a seismic shift. There's a different paradigm here, and I just don't think, irrespective of what we recommend or not, I don't think the taxpayers are going to approve this. I have difficulty with it, and I've sat through all these conferences. I just think at this time, it's a difficult thing for them to approve. And I have it personally and professionally. So, and it is their choice. And all I can do is say yes or no, I recommend it or I don't. But I mean, I think tonight we wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of tell us what financial impact, because I'm not doubting anything else you said. It's a numbers game.
I guess when you're asking the financial impact is that both sides, if you look at it that way, if you got 0 on both sides, you have 0. What I'm saying here is and I don't want to say standard because it seems like it's expected, a half a step is valued, over this contract you lose a step in this thing, in this contract, which means that you're losing $800,000 roughly of monies. The other thing that you're losing here is it reduces them moving up on the steps. So they're delayed in the step movement also because they only move up a half a step. So that's the other part of it. I think the other offset of the contract, as I look at it, is the future benefit of the teachers that are not going to be able to get off that step 30. And I think that there's 33 people now, and in 10 and 15 years, if that happens, it changes the numbers considerably where you're going there. I think.
How far down the road is that?
It's 10 years, I think it is.
Yeah. John,
I go down that rat hole. and talk about 10 years down the road. I want to understand where we stand on here.
Todd, could I just interject one thing which goes along with what
Please.
John and Ron were saying? If you want to look at offset, where you had talked about the 1.25 and the others, assuming the same set of logic, something that people had, okay, and giving up, in essence, if we had continued in the traditional way, a step, over the life of this contract, in effect, we have curtailed $1.6 million in costs. Because, one, it's 2 steps in 3 years, as opposed to 3, and they're a step down from where they would have been if we had gone up. So if a step is worth roughly $800,000, and you're missing a step, cumulative, that's $1.6 million difference over the life of the contract. What we're saying is what was versus what's going to be. So I'm trying to use the same logic, as warped as my logic may be. All right, but if you're down a step, that's a difference of $800,000 across the board. And then the fact is, over that 3-year period, it's only 2 steps instead of 3. That's the equivalent of another $800,000. So the net is 1.6 on. That's not the right word, on unaccrued costs. So there's another way of looking at it. So it's another way of looking at added on to what I think legitimately could be said was cumulative savings. And let me give you another example of that. For this fiscal year, we, along with other school districts, receive federal funds, the jobs grant. We move people out of the general fund budget to pay them with that federal dollars. When we did that last year, what we said was, it's not going to have a boomerang effect because we anticipate we'll be dropping almost the equivalent number of positions going into FY13. And maybe we were off by, I think, 1 full-time equivalent in the end. But we didn't have the boomerang. So in essence, what we did was that 400-some-odd thousand really turned into an 800,000 cost avoidance over a 2-year period. So it's cumulative. So I completely understand your point. You know, you're going from point A to point B, and wow, that looks like a lot of money. But what I'm asking the Budget Committee to also consider is that over a period of time, there has been cumulative savings. So we're not really comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And if on top of that, if what we're looking at is, well, what are we not going to spend that we would have spent if everything had continued the way it was, then I would submit to you that my $1.6 million figure is a legitimate figure as far as that's avoiding costs in the future. And the way you can look at it is because people would be a step behind, if you want to call it that, for as many years as they're here, that's a cumulative savings over time too, because they're not on that step, and our steps have been frozen in value. So there's another way of looking at it. So I'm just throwing it up to hopefully confuse you a little bit more and change your vote.
In fairness, on the master's plan, we're bumping those people up onto a different scale with the in-house master's program.
Right.
So I mean, there's an advantage that they might lose a step on the schematic, but they're jumping up when they get their master's.
And then I guess what I would say to you is that's really a good return on investment, to use the business term. All right? So what I'm saying is for 2/3 of the cost, you're getting a better educated staff who's more up to date on instructional strategies and methodologies to deliver service to the students. So there's another way of looking at it.
And I don't doubt that. The point is that number assumes the teacher does not take advantage of that program.
Correct, because what we've got, but also at the same time, you got to remember over a period of time, you're also probably going to have people who have masters retiring also. Mm-hmm. And people that you're bringing in wouldn't be at that higher scale. So.
Dan, did you?
I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your schedules and your lives to explain this to us, and I appreciate you helping me understand it. What I'd really like to know is, and you've taken a lot of time and put a lot of effort into it, what do you hope you're going to get out of gaining the approval of the Budget Committee?
I think historically, if you look at where the Budget Committee, how it votes, has a lot to do with how the general public votes, and I think we said that at the last meeting. I believe that to be true as well, and I think even if you had less than a 0.7 vote, let's say, I think you're giving the opportunity, and it was said this way as well, you're giving the opportunity to the tax voter to make up their own minds. If we have a 0.7, then we're looking at it pretty much being dead in the water. And quite honestly, I think that's really what we're trying to avoid. We've worked very hard at this, as you can see. There's a lot of thinking that has gone behind it. Ron does an excellent job at negotiating. He's done this for a long time. Nate, I've been privy to that as more of a freshman guy at this level. We take it very, very seriously, and we do take into consideration all of the parties involved. And I think it's really, in my mind, that the voter has at least the ability not to look down and see 0.7 and make up his or her own mind.
Did you have anything, Rich?
You want to go, John?
Just a quick question. There was a mention, I don't know if it was Ron or Nate mentioned, if it goes back to the drawing board, it's fact-finding. I think I understand what that means, but we're not talking about arbitration or...
Well, wait a minute. If we go back, if it gets rejected, we go back to discuss. We go back to negotiations. If we can't reach a negotiation, it goes through the process of the fact finding and then basically arbitration from the
Mediation.
Mediation, which is still a negotiation.
Yeah, it would be mediation first, and then a fact finder's report is the way the process would go. So that's what the system is.
But there is or is not arbitration at the end result, or is it all mediation?
No, there's no binding. We don't have binding arbitration on contract.
The difference between a bachelor's 30 and a master's is about $600 when you go across the line.
Rich?
Just going to ask a tough question for Nate. With this contract, do you see over the next 3 years being able to provide a under default budget? I know it's looking way ahead, but...
What I can tell you is I believe, almost every year that I've been here, and this is my 12th year, believe it or not, and I still look young, too. I was taller, though, and I had more hair. I'll tell you that much. In fact, I think 11 out of the 12 years, we've brought in a default budget. Okay?
You answer the question.
Let me put it to you.
With this in mind.
Yeah. I believe that I can. Right? So unless the world blows up, or something really bizarre happens, I believe we can bring it in under default. We have... I think we have tried, and of course the board does provide us with direction, and I think we try to anticipate, reading the tea leaves, and I've been doing this for a while, so I can kind of catch a hint every once in a while. Brought the budget in below default, and I think we've tried to do it a variety of ways, and I think we can continue to do it. One, I think we try to be sensitive to the drops in enrollment. That's been one. Two, we've also tried to put in cost avoidance and cost savings programs, and I think we've been successful with that too. So yes, I believe that I can bring it in under default.
At this point in time, I would like to provide the opportunity to anybody from the public to come up. I believe there's a microphone over there. If there's anybody that would like to have anything to say...
I'll just move down. Let them sit here.
Okay. I just want to give the opportunity for the public to provide any input they may have.
Martin,
just introduce your...
I'm not leaving because you're coming.
I know.
Just like in the town...
I don't take it personal.
Just like in the town...
Just like on the town side, just provide your name
Right.
and address for the record.
Martin Strugas, 17 Wimbledon Drive.
I feel alone.
Ron, we talked about this a lot of times. The first question you're going to get at the deliberative session, or the questions I always hear in town is, the enrollment is doing this, personnel costs are doing this. And the gap is getting wider and wider as the enrollment goes down. Where along that curve on the personnel costs are we going to see finally a downturn? Because the explanation I got back in the growth years when I was here in the mid-'90s was, well, we need this money, so much per child, $8,000 at the time, whatever it was, to pay for the school, to pay to educate them. But now on the downside, as we're losing the enrollment, I don't see that same argument going on. So when I talk to people and they say, the enrollment is down, yet the costs are up, how do you answer that?
I think you have a couple of ways. I think when you had the growth years, you were looking at budgets that were going up 6, 7, 8%. Okay? We're seeing that, and they were above the default by those numbers.
Yep.
So what we've seen now is you've made the turn where you're staying below the default. The budget we're in this year is less than the previous years. And I can get the book out, and Nate is probably a lot faster than I am on this, but I believe this year's budget, the budget itself is only $200,000 over what last year's budget was. So we're seeing that. Significant cost, and Steve Young had asked this done, significant cost is closing down the school. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's really significant cost, is that's how you get a significant cost. You have to have those reductions. Losing, we've got 96 elementary classrooms. Losing 96 children is only one student in a classroom or 4 in a school in a grade. So you've got to play the numbers. Where you start to see your savings is when I'm able to start reducing those classes, which we have. We were up to 110 elementary classrooms at one time.
Yeah, I remember.
So we're looking at that. We're trying to reduce the cost of education as we're going here. You're going to see the next big reduction is when these classes start getting into the high school, because you have the 7 courses they take, and instead of having 400 students, which is 280 classes, you start getting 350, and you've got all those classes, and you take that and divide by 6, and that's the number of teachers that you no longer need at those levels.
So will that curve start going down?
I don't think it'll go down, because we have the electric cost, we have personnel costs as a reasonable, just reasonable expenses. I think you're going to see the line go down. It's not going to go like this. You're going to see the line go down because you're going to reduce people.
Okay, but you understand that's how most people. First of all, you're going to force me to take an accounting course just to get through all this stuff here. But you understand where people are going to be talking out in the public about this is what they always say, And the other issue you had was about the tax base. Now, the tax base is the valuation of all the businesses and homes in town.
That is correct.
Okay. A lot of times that goes up a lot faster than people's income goes up, and it also goes down faster than some of their income goes down.
Tax bases generally don't go down.
So it's the valuation of the property. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how the taxpayer fits into this, because basing it on the tax base, what I'm looking for is the ability of the taxpayer to pay for it. And how do you measure that? Nowhere do we have discussions about that, and it's very difficult, as John was saying. There are a lot of people in town, like I said before, are on fixed incomes, single incomes, that kind of stuff. And as these costs keep coming up, if you add this side, the school side, and the town side, we're looking at more than $204 over 3 years, a lot more. And that's where the problem is. I'm going right now in the first year of a personal experience, a 0 increase. The state said no to everything. No increase, nothing. They even not doubled, but they increased our costs on health care and a lot of other items. Going into the fiscal year next year is going to be 0 again. And if this legislator stay the same as it is, I'm looking at another 2 years, which means out of my 10 years of working for the state, 6 will have no increase whatsoever. And that's where I face. That's why I look at this and say, you know, 3 years from now, it's $3 million. Then you look at the town side, they're looking to add 4 firefighters, the equipment and all that stuff. It's an either or. You know, right now, I think fire safety is very high in the town for personal reasons, as Reed Clark would say. He wants to see that second ambulance. And so I'm looking for the trade-off. And the trade-off, unfortunately, is not only on the contracts for the teachers here, but also on the town side. And for the record, I voted against that 17.5% increase. I thought that, you know, the people voted against the town council advice, and I thought it was ill-advised for the townspeople to do that, and now they're paying the cost of that. But that's where I look at it. That's where my trade-off is. And I'm trading off this year. This year, I want the firefighters hold the contracts on the labor cost, and then next year, the year after, we can look at the labor cost. That's all I'm looking at.
Marty, I'll give you an example of how the tax base plays into this, and I think we have the perfect example. If you remember last year at budget time, we had an increase in our tax rate. We presented an increase in our tax rate last year. So did the town. With the increase in the base, the tax bills were virtually the same except for the county. I think that went up a penny. So that's how the increase in tax base affects the tax rate. We go in here, the tax rate we are using is last year's, the tax base that we are using is last year's tax base.
Yeah, but then the question comes up, why did the escrow company send me a bill for $800?
But I don't know that, but the tax rate and your tax bill, unless your property value went up, and we have no control.
I don't think so.
But I'm not arguing that, but I've seen that happen. But
You didn't build a shed or anything, did you?
I better check.
The tax base
Yeah.
last year virtually wiped out
the
increases
yeah.
in the, if I'm not mistaken. There's Peter shaking his head there. So that's how that increase, that $30 million, we had, what did we project last year?
I can't shoot.
Okay, but whatever we projected was wiped out by that increase. We went into the tax meeting saying like this 19 cents, it was, we were wiping out that. Just as a point, and I understand that, you know, I'm a taxpayer and I have no longer have children in the school system, so I'm on the other end of the spectrum. But I think the value.
Ironic, isn't it?
And I think, but I have a house in town, and I think the educational system here adds value to that house, and that's the part.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just kind of as a point of discussion, don't you think other towns are going through the same thing, and those towns that are, you know, negotiating even worse contracts in terms of percentage increase? I don't mean worse in you know, your efforts. I mean, they're going to pay the piper. You know, I mean, it's...
But a lot of schools do pay the piper on that. And again, I just heard the numbers that Derrysburg's using, and I see what we've negotiated for a contract. So you know, if you do a relative comparison, and they don't have a high school. And why I say that's important is they don't have those really specific areas, the math, the science at high school levels, that are very difficult to get, that you know, you look at those things. So, and they pay for it a different way at a district cost at Pinkerton. But that's a whole other discussion some other time. But I guess what I'm saying is, when I look at that contract that you just told me, I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand 3 years from now, this is another one of my hang-ups with, you know, negotiating 3 years into the future, is Bedford just laid some people off, according to what I read in the newspaper. So I don't see the immediate need in the next year that we're going to start having a huge, you know, attrition of folks going off to other towns. I think everybody's kind of suffering through the same thing.
Yeah, but the problem you have is not so much next year. You're right. Okay, but if they don't get a raise this year, they're stuck on the step this year. If they don't get a raise next year, they're stuck on the step next year. Now they're at this number here. and they've got these years of experience. In Londonderry, they're still at this point. When they go over to Bedford, please correct me if I'm wrong, they can add those 2 years of experience to them, so they're on step 6 when they go negotiate that contract or go into that job. They're on step 4 here. The answer is, I'm not going to jump them up 2 steps. The voters say no to the contract and we can't reach an agreement and there's no retroactive, they're on step 4 next year. So they lost a year. If they go to Bedford or they go someplace else in a year, they gain a year of they're on step 5. They've got 5 years of experience. We're just not paying them for that. So that's where you start losing the money. If you lose a couple of years of steps, they start looking at, oops, if I jump over here, I can have, let's say the contract gets not passed for 2 years. They got plus 2 years to go anywhere else in the district. And if they're, again, I'm going to get in trouble for this. If it's an elementary teacher, probably not that much in demand. It's a science and math teacher, they're gone. I mean, there's not enough of them around that they'll come and take them. And those are the areas that you want to maintain the quality teachers. And there's other areas that you run into with some of the special education and some of the other items that you're looking for. So that's the difference. It's not so much, hey, they're going to stay here and they're laying off here. It's 2 or 3 years when the economy's going to pick up, and it is going to pick up. Or they get an opening in a spot that someone retires. Then they can go and pick up all the steps that they missed here and go there because they do have those experience years.
Lastly, I would just like to say thank you. The explanation tonight for the steps and how they work and the strategic, the way you're looking at it, thank you for the explanation. It's much more clear. Unfortunately, a lot of people in London are not going to look at this or fall asleep if they look at this. But I understand what you're trying to do and how the steps and recruitment for long-term, but I thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Martin. Anybody else from the public that would like to come up? I offer this opportunity to you at this time. Just introduce your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Brown, 5 Carousel Court. At my age, I have to kind of refer to notes, so hopefully I'm apologizing if I'm looking down, but I just need to keep track of where I'm going. I want to echo what Marty just said, just kind of sitting here listening to the process. I want to thank the Budget Committee, Nate, and the school board members for the opportunity to talk tonight. This type of discussion is very valuable. The level that you've reached, the details that you got into, while it may look like it's just a bunch of regulars who have nothing better to do than come to these meetings, and that may be the case, I would love to see this type of discussion earlier in the process, maybe as one of the agenda items in a budget workshop, so that you didn't get to this point, because I think this was extremely valuable. I mean, just really dead-on valuable, okay? Regardless of where you come down at the end of the vote, okay? And I mean that with all sincerity. So I'm speaking just as myself, one individual, one taxpayer, just because I was previously a volunteer in a different capacity. That's got nothing to do with what I'm saying. This is me speaking tonight. In listening to the Budget Committee come to their previous decision, one of the things that I took away from that is they were making, and I'm speaking for what I saw, they can correct me if I'm wrong, they were making their decision then in the context of this larger role that they collectively and individually kind of expressed they need to take. Ron, you were on the Budget Committee and I was too, and we kind of approach it in our own way. And I think they were approaching it in the right way. I really do. I think they were kind of saying, you know, there's discrete warrant articles, there's budgets on both sides, but we're representing folks who deal with the aggregate. What's my tax bill? It comes in and it's this number. And we kind of pay attention to the one number. And we know what it does each year, even though there's a little county in there and a little state in there. It essentially comes down to what's the town and school district doing each year. So I think they kind of did the right thing by looking at it in a broader context, as opposed to this being one discrete decision. That's what I would do if I were them. It doesn't mean it's right. Someone else may do it completely differently. So speaking just for myself only, it's the annual cost and the aggregate cost and the subsequent tax rate impact that creates a problem with this one article. Just from a layman's perspective, and I consider myself a layman because I'm considering what the aggregate cost is going to be from all the articles on the town side and the lesser number, but still a number of articles on the school side. So that's the struggle, I think, because I'm struggling with it. It's very difficult to relate to the amount of cost annually. It's difficult to relate to the third-year cost. The explanations that you've given for that makes it much clearer now. I kind of know why it is what it is. I know what you went through to get to what it is, and that's very helpful, as Marty said. It may not change some people's votes, but that was really good to do. I'm considering, you know, the budgets on both sides. I'm considering the firefighter article. That's something that I have publicly stated I support. I have my reasons for doing that. It's a significant decision. It's a significant cost. It's a cost that's going to increase annually, year over year, and it's probably not going to reduce anyone's tax bill. In fact, it's going to do quite the opposite over the next several years because those folks will belong to a collective bargaining agreement, as we all know. So that's a significant decision. Whether it's right or wrong to kind of trade off one article or the other, that's not what I'm talking about. It's just difficult for folks. The one thing that I would hate to see happen to volunteers on the Budget Committee who just happen to be people who live in town, and you guys who are just volunteers who live in town, is to have any kind of acrimony develop over how this vote ends up going, the Budget Committee's vote tonight, and ultimately what's decided in the ballot box. I don't necessarily look at a no vote or a lack of support for this as a lack of support for the teachers, for the value they provide. It flies in the face of logic to think that people would say no to this to spite themselves and to spite their home values, as you're saying. That's not why I would say no to this. I don't think that's why others would say no to this. Most of us did move here for the specific reasons you're talking about in terms of what the school district brings to our lives. So I would like people, if at all possible, to separate whatever decision is made by these folks and in the ballot box, separate the emotion from it and not look at it from the standpoint of people being mistreated or not valued. That's not the case. We're in a really different world now. There's been paradigm shifts across the board in a variety of ways. It's a very difficult time for lots of folks. There are pockets of bright lights. There are some things that are kind of turning around, but on the whole, it's going to take a little while. The timing of these things is probably never good. Okay, even in a good economy, this size number is tough to swallow. In this type of economy, where it's kind of sustained itself for a while, and most homeowners have kind of adapted for multiple years in a row, speaking for myself, it's hard to relate to this number. Okay, it just is. I don't relate to it in my private job, which I'm fortunate to have, and I don't relate to it with my home budget. But I relate to the value that the school district brings to me, as brought to my two children, one of which is still in school, and hopefully a larger, a better home value than I otherwise would have in another town. So, you know, I feel sorry for the Budget Committee, just in terms of how difficult it's been for this year for these folks. They're earning their pay in a big way, and I don't want to see them take an unnecessary hit by otherwise well-intentioned people, and to look at the bigger picture. Okay, one of the points that was made here, should this not pass in the ballot box, because that's where the ultimate decision is going to be made, is it doesn't result, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, okay? I don't believe a lack of support for this results in the loss of jobs. I don't believe it results in someone's current base pay going down. I don't think it changes their current benefit package. Yes, it puts them in a position where they don't get a raise, something a lot of people can currently relate to, okay? That's the rub here, is that a lot of people across the community can relate to having been put in that position without any choice, with no bargaining agreement behind them. It's just simply your employer said, you know, we're not able to do it this year, you know, and you as an employee were left with a choice of whether you stayed in that position or looked elsewhere. You'll learn very quickly that the looking elsewhere just wasn't the right thing to do, and standing pat, staying where you are, kind of muddling through with the job you have was what you had to do. So it's a long-winded way of me saying that as an individual, it's hard for me to relate to the numbers annually and in aggregate and a tax impact standpoint to this specific article when taken into the context of both the town and school budget and what the end result will be. And I'm going to make some choices on some of these discrete articles, and it includes this one. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening to me, and I apologize for being long-winded.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Any comments, any input from anybody? Lisa?
I would just say that I think when the community is analyzing this article, that it's unfortunate that we're not able to give them the percentage increases, to give them an understanding of what, in fact, those numbers represent. The truth is, until I filled out my sheet with the percentage increase year to year, I had sticker shock as well. But I think in reviewing what's happened with the town contracts and understanding that in the first year there's only 1% difference, 2% difference, excuse me. In the second year there's a 0.2% difference, and in the third year of the contract there's a 0.5% interest in the rates of pay. That I feel that I can support this contract. I'm very concerned about what happens to our teachers and the sense of unity that we have in this town, the sense of support that we have. Not that it's meant by anyone who opposes this article. We're a budget committee, we're looking at numbers, and I totally respect that. But I do feel that I would like to change my vote on this article, having heard the analysis and gone through the deeper type of discussions that we've had this evening. So that's the only comment that I have.
All right.
to make.
Are there any other comments from the public at this time? Please. If you would be so kind, come on up and have a seat by the mic. Just provide your name and address for the record.
My name is Mike Salvatore. I live at 34 West Road. Right off the bat, I want to tell you that I've been an educator my entire life. Never in Londonderry. I don't know anyone on this board. I've never talked to anyone here. I also am married to a Londonderry teacher, so I want to tell you that right off the bat. I've worked in multiple municipalities in multiple states. I don't want to get into the numbers. I want to tell you that the town of Londonderry is considered the gold standard of education in New Hampshire, in New England. And there's a reason for that. All measurable criteria, from graduation rates to achievement test scores to attendance in college. People always ask me, what are they doing in Londonderry? People can never forget that. People did move here because of the schools. We didn't move here so we could pick apples or pay 30% more for a house than it's really valued. We moved here for the schools. My kids are gone. They went through the Londonderry school systems. Went on to, big, college and blah, blah, blah. And I feel fortunate to have come into this town. Again, I don't know Nate. He is considered one of the best superintendents around, and people must realize that. We got to this point for a reason, because of the methodology that our school board and our teachers, what we do here is why we are the gold standard. I wish you would take that into account. Our kids, they graduate from high school, they go on to college. If they don't graduate from high school, they stay around town, and they will be in your backyard robbing you. So, the money, I'm a taxpayer too, and I said, oh my God, you know, you look at the amount of money being spent, tax rate goes up, the economy really is terrible right now, and you know, my family, we feel it too. But never ever forget that this school system is so heads and I'm not going to tell you other towns I've worked in. I only know Peter Carroll. He's the only guy I know here, and he knows where I've worked. We are so above other towns in this state, other towns in New England, and we got there for a reason, by the way they do things here. And part of that is the way they negotiate their contracts, the way they treat their teachers. Their teachers are the school system. They're not the school system. The teachers are the school system. We have great teachers here, and there's a reason we have great teachers. And I know I wouldn't want to be any of you guys taking a vote tonight, so you don't have kids in school. When I sent my kids to school, someone else paid for it. I couldn't afford paying my kids, and fire and police. Now I have to help someone else send their kids to school. That's the way it works. That's the way the United States works. The whole benefits the few, people that need help. So thank you guys. You do a good job. No matter how this vote goes, go home. We all appreciate you. There's a lot of us out there that know what a good job you do, and you guys too. I don't know. I hear you've been working every night here, so
we have a bunk in the back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other? Sure, John.
Yeah, a comment that I've heard is it's it's tough to swallow, and I understand, and we've gone around with this, and I hear the word raise a lot to the teachers. I want to put in a little different term, okay? Because if I take the buildings away, and I take the grounds away, and I take everything else away, I can teach a kid in a cave, and it's all about the education, okay, and the people that are educated. If I take and put that into private terms, okay, if I am a manufacturer, I invest in my machinery, okay? Even in bad times, I may not give someone a raise, but I will invest in my machinery so I can still produce my product, okay? In this particular case, my machinery is my teacher. And if I don't invest in my teacher, in my machinery, and what produces my product, which is an educated child, then I have failed. I'm out of business. So even though this is a tough pill to swallow, we have negotiated the best we can to ensure that we keep our machinery operating correctly, so that when good times do roll around, we are able to be productive and competitive. Because it's true, education is a competitive environment. So I ask you to kind of look at what we're really doing. We're not giving teachers raises per se, because I can argue 9 cents per hour for over 10 years. It's not a lot of money. But what I'm really doing is I'm investing in the machinery of education that ensures that we produce our product. And that's what Londonderry does, and I've said a little bit about that before. But please understand, I think that's really what it's about. And look at that from an investment standpoint. Look at that from the private standpoint. You're not going to take a piece of machinery and not maintain it. You're not going to buy new machinery so you can you're not going to not buy new machinery so you can be competitive. And that's really what we have here. And I think we've gotten a good deal moving forward to ensure that we have that in place.
Thank you, John. At this point in time, I'd like to offer the Budget Committee the opportunity, if we feel we've heard enough, if we have any more questions, if we want anything else at this point in time, now's the time. Or, if the Budget Committee would like, I could like to find out if we feel that I can take a motion, whether or not we'd like to rescind our prior vote for the purpose of taking another vote at this time. So do I have a motion to rescind our previous vote? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second for discussion. Any discussion, any further input, anything else?
My only discussion on rescinding is that, and I will say that I am going to vote no, but my discussion is that we did reconsider other articles, and I think the English lease is the only one to vote for it. We should have the right to do that in the deliberative session. Yep. So I would have to vote in favor of rescinding.
I agree with Chris, if Lisa, anybody, if Lisa
I think
Todd,
that Lisa said, I mean in Colorado.
John, he wants to have the opportunity to change their vote.
Yep.
They should have that opportunity.
Are you saying we should vote to?
I'm saying that we should vote to,
again.
we should vote to
Right.
rescind our vote, and we should vote again, because somebody would like the opportunity to change their vote.
Okay.
I see what you're saying.
Yep. Do we understand what we're voting on then?
Voting on
To rescind our prior vote for the purpose of taking another vote.
You're voting to reconsider your vote. So if you vote on this, then it allows you to vote on it again. You're not
That's the purpose.
You're not rescinding your vote. You're voting to reconsider.
And I respect what you're saying, and I respect Lisa's right to change her mind. I think it sets a bad precedent. I'm not voting to give somebody, a hard time or to obfuscate. I'm voting because I don't want to be in the position that, because of pressure after the fact from whatever source in any vote that we're reconsidering, because the system never ends. I would have preferred to make these votes later in the game. I think we voted on these earlier than we did last year, and I think it's complicated things. I think for whatever reason, we voted a little earlier than we had last year, and we might not be in this reconsideration mode, which I find very uncomfortable. So,
Fair enough.
I understand.
Rich?
I tend to agree with John in the respect about the vote too early. I don't think we had the right information in the school board meeting that we had in here. I was actually quite offended by being called out as being uneducated in regards to it. We didn't have the information to actually call it. We made a vote based on the fact that we didn't have the information. So in this regard, I would like to see a revote. Again, same thing as John says. I'm uncomfortable with doing that. However, I think it's necessary because now we have the information to actually make a good, sound decision.
Yeah, and I think in the future, it would be better if information for both the town and the school side, all budget items, every article item, was we had a little bit more time to review, digest, discuss, and investigate all information that we feel we need. And when you have those opportune moments in a meeting, whether you're attending a school board budget hearing, where you have the school board and the budget committee combined, or on the town side, that is the time to probe, ask questions, and so forth. All I say is, in the future, it may help whatever future budget committee members are on the budget committee to make sure that they don't understand something and want information, just ask those questions right then and there. And push back whenever you feel like, look, I'm not ready to make a vote, because I can be honest, I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to get a vote in time before we have these budget hearings so that we could make sure that we understood our position, with the understanding that if we need to, we can address what we need to coming out of it, which is what we're doing here. I understand the concern. I understand the cycle that would concern one, but it is what it is. This is where we stand. Right now, we have a motion and a second on the table, rather than rehash old wounds, what I may have done, or what anybody may have done to drive things in a more rapid manner than what may be in people's comfort zone. I understand that, and I can respect that. I know I wasn't feeling too comfortable in a number of respects as well, but it is what it is, right? We're given the information. I've gone through these budget books in detail. I've had open dialogue with the school district, with the school board. They've been outstanding in providing anything I've asked for almost immediately, and anybody can do that. So I leave that out there. I throw that out there. So given that, what we have on the table is a motion, a second, and I was calling it rescind, and others would like to call it a reconsideration. I'm not particular either way. The point is, we're going to vote on whether or not we want to take a second vote on this. So do we feel comfortable taking a vote? I'd like to propose that we take a vote to reconsider our prior vote. So all those in favor?
I throw 2 cents. I'm inclined to vote yes to reconsider, although I made a decision based on numbers and the net effect to taxpayers. I'm not inclined to change my vote ultimately. But I did say throughout the budget process that I think in our heart of hearts we should vote the way on our budget committee votes, the same way we saw it to vote in the ballot box. I don't like forcing someone to feel that they're disingenuous with themselves. So I guess I understand Lisa's inclined to change her vote. I want to give her that respect and that opportunity. But I think it really sets a bad precedent. And so, I mean, it's the lesser of 2 evils, and I'm not sure it's something we want to open the door to. It's a Pandora's box, but I'm going to do that out of respect to Lisa and whoever else wants to vote the way they feel they should have voted. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I don't think it's should have, shouldn't have. I think it's a matter of, given the additional information we have, let's give the opportunity for people to take another vote. That's it. Okay, so all those in favor of voting to reconsider and revote, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. That's 7-0. Okay, that said, let's take another vote on Article 3. And this is, I'll just throw it out there. Do I have a motion to...
Motion to take a vote on Article 3.
Well, the motion is to vote whether or not we recommend and support Article 3.
The technical vote is we move to approve Article 3. That's the language of the adoption by committee, and then you can vote against it.
Thank you.
Very sorry, Todd.
It's getting late, and we have Article 5 to address.
The article.
Yeah.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor of Article 3, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against, please indicate by saying nay. Nay. That's a 1-6 vote.
And if I could just make a comment, there was something indicated earlier that pressure had been brought to bear. In fact, what happened is, I think what happened with a lot of us in the past week is that we sat down and we went through all of our papers and we did a lot of homework. And I reviewed our positions on certain expenditure items on both the town and the school. And I realize that education in this community, as all over the world, comes down to one teacher sitting in front of a child and being able to transmit to them the knowledge that they need to move forward. And because of that, and because of the very tight numbers that we're looking at, particularly in the next 2 fiscal years, the 2 latter fiscal years, of less than a point difference between these salaries, I found no reason to oppose the salary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. All right, so moving on to Article 5. Article 5 is the Londonderry Association of Allied Health Professionals Bargaining Agreement. If approved, there'd be I believe, a $51,930 impact in the 2013 fiscal year.
In the fiscal year 2014, you'd have a $56,526 impact, and in fiscal year 2015, it'd be a $61,500 impact. I think that roughly equates to between 1 and 2 cents per thousand. I believe the first year it works out to be roughly around 1.5 cents per thousand. The second year, about 1.7 cents per thousand. In the third year, roughly about 1.8 cent per thousand impact. So that's out there. Do I have a motion to recommend support of this article?
And say it right.
I make a motion that we approve Article 5.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
What are the percentages? And I have in my notes that I don't know if who offered it, that this is the same contract essentially as the teacher's contract. It's just that the numbers are smaller and the size of the group is smaller.
It's about 3%. It's about 3. It's a step. Their steps are 3%, and the anyone that's not on a scale has got the same percentages as the teachers, which is 2, 2.25, 2.5.
So it's 3% on steps.
On steps.
Okay.
2.5.
And then 2, 2.25, 2.5 for the others.
Chris?
Same question about numbers, but how many?
36.
38?
38.
I have.
38. Do we know how many are...
33.
Yeah, that was that one. Mr. Young made a comment about how in demand these people were. Do we know who is in what position? Because it seems like it covers a lot of people, and being in the position I'm in, I can tell you the school nurse is not in demand. I have at least 100 people that would do it now.
First of all, on this thing here, just to be, let's bring everything out, is that there's several scales in this contract. Not everyone's on the same scale. The people that we're saying are in demand, and correct me if I'm wrong again, is a speech and language therapist. Those are the ones, and there is 12.8 of them with a speech and language assistant, which only has a bachelor's degree, is probably working towards a master's degree on that. The OTs, I believe, is another area that we're running into a problem on. And what was the other? Physical therapy. So no argument about the nurses, but that's a very small portion of the union. They've got a separate scale type of deal that we're looking at there. And our feeling is on this union here with the speech and language, if we were to go out and contract those services, the money that the district would spend would be significantly more than this contract in those areas. Speech and language, OT, PT, and
I can tell you the position that I'm in is speech therapy. Probably talking at least 50 or 60 an hour.
I think it's even more than that. Yes. I think that sometimes, I think it's about 100. So that's where we are. It's a very high, limited field, very high demand between hospitals.
Right, because they'd rather go private than...
Yes. So.
Any other questions, comments, anything, inquiries on this contract?
I'll just make the comment again that because these percentages are very low and they're very competitive with what we had at the town side, that I am going to be supporting the article.
For the same reasons used on Article 3 as to why I opposed Article 3, given the cost impact on Article 5, given that it is minimal in impact to a cost save to the taxpayer, and given the economic times and the reasonable cost to the taxpayer in year one, I would lean towards supporting Article 5, and from my standpoint, for the very same reasons why I found it difficult to support Article 3. These economic times, I think unfortunately the Article 3 collective bargaining agreement just was such a large number. It was a tough pill to swallow in this particular economic period. Article 5 is this collective bargaining agreement, given because it's
smaller number, it's a little bit more palatable. It's also retaining some of these folks as well for a lot of the same good reasons why you argue for Article 3. So from my perspective, it does make sense to support this particular article, given the economic impact on minimum of it. Tom?
I have a question. Something that's kind of baffling. We've got a situation in this particular article where we're dealing with professionals that are in high demand, per se, or there's a lack of them out there. You mentioned the same scenario when you were talking about being competitive and talking about math teachers and science teachers and whatever. Can't we pay them more?
No.
Why?
Union contracts. Let me, it's not something that has not crossed my mind.
You get the 350 hitter and you get the 250 hitter, you gotta pay more for them.
Right, but they're individual contractors. Here is, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just, it's a union. They're all treated equal on that. And when we go talk, we can talk outside of here and have a beer. I understand exactly what you're saying.
Because I certainly think that you should pay specialized people more money. They have a unique job.
If we could, let's reel this back to Article 5, and we've already...
On this union here, as it was put together in the contracts, we were able to do that because there was such a difference in talents. And there were different categories. I can make a real defined category out of them, and we were able to make special groups.
What's the split in the 38 nurses versus PTOT again?
There are 9 nurses out of that group, 9.8 nurses, I believe it is. 9.8 nurses out of the group. And 9.8, so that means the other group, the rest of them are in critical shortage areas, or areas that would be very difficult to fill.
We pay that .8 person, .8?
Yes.
Yes, it's a .8 person, kind of missing part of the body.
Is that their microphone?
All right.
I'll tell you the difficulty I have with this one is I recognize that you may have me at the $50 an hour replacement cost, but it's identical to the teacher's contract, and it becomes a matter of fundamental fairness. And if I'm not in favor of a contract because it's got more members, can I sign off on a same contract for these folks? And the only distinguishing factor may be that specialty cost that's going to come to bear if these people have to be replaced.
The cost avoidance on this contract is significant. I believe the number that we're paying is closer to $100 per range if we have to go out for contracted services for speech and language. So
that's a cost benefit that we, by following and approving this contract, getting the voters to...
John, that's the number you were looking for. I couldn't provide a cost benefit number for it. And this one here is if I go out to get one of those people, my chances of hiring one are very, very slim. So I would have to provide those services. Those are in IEPs required. I would have to contract those hours.
Do we have people that we're paying on a contract or hourly basis now, or are they all employees? Is there anyone outside of this group? So
they're all in-house.
Keep in mind, on a 52-week salary, $100 an hour is $200,000 a year unloaded cost. So if we have to go out and get 2 of these people, you're talking a significant amount of money.
And when we have to go out and get somebody to fill a spot, is it, do we go through a headhunter? Do we keep resumes on file? What's the...
Resumes on file, yeah. We never use a headhunter.
How about college recruitments? I know some schools have OT and PT programs.
Schools, we do job fairs, we're in contact all the time.
Anything else from the committee?
How many
Tom?
times have we had to go outside?
We've had to.
I think the only time is like during maternity leave or something like that.
Once or twice since I've been here due to long-term illness or maternity leave.
It's not recurring.
No.
But if you're looking for a career path, being a speech and language therapist is a career
I have a niece that just graduated college as a bachelor. She was at another school district, and economically, she could not return to the school district after she got a speech and language because a hospital grabbed her at a significantly higher rate. That's a personal experience.
At this point in time, I'd like to open it up to any public input, comments, or anything, if there's any. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Do we have any arguments for or against? Any positions you'd like to share? Any comments or questions?
Will you entertain a motion?
I will entertain a motion. I believe we already entertained a motion. We had a second, and we were in discussion.
Will you entertain a vote?
I will entertain a vote if we feel ready. I do not want to vote before we feel ready. If we are ready, do I have a consensus that we're ready to take a vote? Yes? All right, so those in favor of support of Article 5, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against, please indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
That's, I believe, 5-2. 5-2 in favor of Article 5.
Who voted in opposition? Tom and John.
Now, at this point in time, I'd like to open it up, and I just wanted to get a feel for the Budget Committee. Did we want to relook at, I forgot how we left it. I had a note, and that's the only reason why I have it on my list. Something about Article 8, if anybody wanted to reconsider Article 8.
What's Article 8?
This was the $600,000 Buildings Maintenance Fund. Is there anybody, was that, okay. I'm fine either way, if it is what it is, so. No? Okay, with that.
Getting ready to take the Council of Dalton route on this meeting. Dolan?
With that, then, I'd like to,
Yes.